Order. Okay, first, welcome everyone to the September 7th, 2021 Council of Revenues General Fund meeting. We're calling the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, Dr. Kobe, has there been any communications to the council?
No.
Okay. Is there any public comment at this point? I see no hands raised, no chats. Okay, I see no public comment. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Next item is the discussion and approval of the minutes from the August 2nd, 2021 personal income meeting. Any motion to adopt the minutes?
I'll move.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Okay. Move. So in front of us is the motion to adopt the minutes from the August 2nd, 2021 personal income forecast meeting. Oops, sorry. Okay. Vice Chair Newell.
Yes.
Dr. Siderhout,
Yes.
Dr. Bonham,
Yes.
Councilmember Maynard,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee. We can't hear you.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Dr. Kobe, the minutes are unanimously approved.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a review of recent tax legislation. So I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Kobe.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. So you guys can see the screen all right?
Yes.
Okay. So go here. So again, just to remind you guys, we share the revenue impacts of all legislation that was passed and approved by the governor that's in excess of $5 million on the and has impact directs and that $5 million effect is on the general fund, right? In this case, we have two pieces of legislation that passed. One was the low income LIHTC or low income housing tax credit. This one, it did two things. It slightly changed the formula for who can claim those taxes and or how those taxes could be claimed, which increased the value of the credit slightly to people to banks and things like that. And then the other thing it did is it extended the sunset clause. So it was going to end in 2023 and they extended that. And so that's what it was there. Just as a mild note, the extension was not included in your baseline amount. So, or this, I should say the suspension of the tax upon its sunset was not included in the baseline effect. So we did not, when we go to the bottom of the line numbers and stuff, this number that you're seeing right here is not the same exact number that you'll see at the bottom below the line chart, just because you guys were taking, you guys, or at least in our charts, we were not already considering the revenue gain that would have happened from the sunset of this tax credit.
So I have a question, Dr. Kobe. Are you saying that that this only shows part of the revenue impact? There's another part below the line or somewhere else?
This is the full revenue impact, and there's someplace else in the below line. So if you look at all of your below the line graphs, you won't see this number 24.9. You'll see something slightly less because we were not considering the expiration of this tax credit in the baseline amount, right? So basically we would be adding back or subtracting something without adding back the extent or the suspension of the credit.
Doesn't
So
revenue impact flip though, because if you keep it at a 5-year, you don't have the credits being used in the 6 years 6 through 10.
correct. So it was a larger tax credit, right? And
Oh,
then
It didn't change it, right? I thought it just
extended
compressed
it.
it from 10 years to 5 years. And
Well, the extension was to allow that rule to claim it in 5 years versus 10 years.
wasn't that under the current law before it expired?
But it was going to expire, right? So this is the
Yeah.
cost of it expiring, but because we hadn't incorporated the amount of the gain that would come from the expiration, which was about $20 million or probably $18 million, that wasn't included in as a gain when this law expired.
So when the law expired, it would have been over 10 years, right? Rather than 5 years.
But the gains for each year would be like $18 million a year.
So this reflects the $18 million gain plus the cost of the original 10-year credit.
This includes this is the cost. This is the entire cost of the bill. This is the entire cost of the bill that we delivered to the legislature. This is everything. The only difference is when we're thinking about what the impacts are on the general fund, the revenue gains were not included. The revenue gains that would have occurred from the cessation of this tax credit was not included in our baseline. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Because normally when you accelerate like depreciation, it flips in the out years because before and after you're still writing off 100%. So you don't change the 100%. So normally it flips in the later years, and I don't see it flipping in the later years.
We're assuming it's going to be extended all the way through. Yeah.
So you're assuming it perpetually it's I guess, out eternally. It's always going to be a revenue cost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the second law that passed was the termination of the revenue transfers from TAT collections to the special funds, right? So all told, the gain is about $187 million to the general fund from special funds. That's a little over, it's about 2.3% of general fund growth per year.
But Seth, were those was the TAT? I know it was almost non-existent there for a while, but were we actually sharing those revenues with the county?
So before last year, because of the governor's executive order, we stopped making transfers to the special fund. However, the executive order was terminated, and according to the previous law that was on the book, we were allocating well over about $140 million, or no, $180 million or $187 million in other things to the special funds. In fact, we were doing 210 if you include all the other special funds, right? So this legislation basically eliminated those transfers to the special funds from the TAT.
Seth, I have a question.
Yeah.
Going back to your below the line numbers for the TAT, I see that now in fiscal 2020, there was a net outflow of 223 million, and that's presumably that was county and the, what is it, the HTA money. But then that drops to about 60 to 70 to 80 million or so.
Yes.
So there's still an outflow, net outflow.
Correct. Well, you still have the mass transit fund, which is
Oh,
1% of
Okay,
GD, 1% of all gross receipts for TAT, right? And then there's still some money going to the convention center, and there's some of them are like the Turtle Bay Fund and some really small funds.
okay. All right, thank you.
So all told, everything is about, the net impact is about $180 million for fiscal year 22, and it decreases slightly over the years as the light debt credit increases. Any other questions? Great. So this is the preliminary for as of today for the month of August. What you'll see is this is a true number. So we're up 7.3% on the year. This is in spite of the fact that there was $308 million added to the last fiscal year due to the change in the filing date, right? So if you took out this number from the denominator, we would be up 43.3% on the year. A couple of things that also you'll notice that the GET is up about 43%. Strong rebound. This reflects the July tax receipts for GET, which is strong. Individual income tax is would have been down 31%, or officially is down 31%, but when we adjust it and take out the 281 million, we'd be up 20.9%. But the fact that we're down 31% was being compensated by higher GET revenues, and as you'll notice, much higher TAT revenues. And yeah, that's it. Any questions about this? Oh, the other thing you'll notice, and Jack, this is to your point. So these are the withdrawals, the current withdrawals we have from the TAT, right? So we have $1.5 million for the Convention Center Enterprise Fund. The Tourism Fund is 11 million, and the Land and Development Fund is 3 million.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So before there would have been a 105 million for the counties and a tourism fund of 79 million in there as well.
Did you drill down a little bit on, last year's July 20th receipts for general excise tax? Because March of 20 was it March of 20 or March of 20 we were closed, right? Yeah, March of 20 and
20.
March of
actually
April and May, right? April and May of 20, but that would have been fiscal 20, right?
No, it would have been fiscal. Yeah, it would have been fiscal 20.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, I guess tourism is open, but do you have any idea why GE was up so much, like 200 million?
Well, I mean, last year the tourism was closed, and our economy is more open, right? And you have, and Carl, you can probably chime into this because you have the mobility data, but the mobility is, even for locals, is much higher now compared to last year, right? So we just have a much more open economy.
Yeah, that's right. Because June and May, April, we were closed.
Exactly.
20, yeah. And July 20th would represent the collections, not only for the monthly, but quarterly and semi-annual too.
Right. So our collections are generally in July, they're generally higher than other months just because they include quarterly payments. But mind you that's really only small taxpayers. All the big taxpayers have to pay on a monthly basis. So it does show something, but it's not an incredibly big change. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Great. So just to go over this is the month over month. So right here is cumulative year to date, right? So this is 2 months. This is just month over the month. So you get an idea of what are the changes. So for August, we're actually up almost 50% for GET. So really high. Corporate income tax was lower. Individual income tax, where we are up compare 30%, which would be a lot. And then of course the transient accommodation tax.
So we're up quite for, we're up for individual tax.
Mhm. Yep. This is the year, this is month over month, right? So this is
August
August
over-
No,
2021.
it's year over year. Month over month means comparing 2 months in the same year.
Oh yeah. Okay, so
Just
year over year. Yeah,
This is,
Same
August
month,
21.
year over year.
Yeah.
this represent 2 months because in July of 20, we had the 300 million, right?
yes.
Of income tax with the extensions and also with the estimated taxes. We had about 300 million in extra individual income tax in July of 2020. So that's not reflected here, right?
That is not.
only on just, yeah,
Only the month of August.
okay.
Mhm, correct. Yeah, and thanks a lot, Kurt. I really appreciate you pointing
Yeah.
that out, because like the idea is to present a more direct comparison where you don't have the $308 million included, right?
Okay, I see. Yeah, it's more apples to apples because that was kind of a aberration in July of 20.
Mhm.
Seth, I had a question.
Absolutely, Marilyn.
My question is, with regard to the HARPTA withholdings, there's been a lot of sales of real estate.
Mhm.
Where is that? Is it shown up in estimated tax payments, or is it? Well, it's not withholding on wages, so I was just wondering, where is it being reflected?
I'd have to double check, and I don't have the exact answer for you, but it would either be in declared estimated taxes or payments with returns, and I don't know which one it is.
That would be next year, right? Because people would
Yeah,
declare.
the reason I'm saying that is because when you have the HARPTA withholdings and all these sales coming through now, it's just a withholding amount. And when the people file the tax returns, that could reverse when they ask for the refund when the returns are filed.
Mhm.
This
So
is on a
you're
cash
talking-
basis, though. Cash basis, right?
Yeah, cash
Yeah,
basis.
so in other words, if we get the payment, we record it, right? Like if we get it in August, we
I just
record
didn't
it.
know where it was recorded, whether it's under estimated taxes
No.
there.
But you're talking about a tax, it's not a tax. You're talking about money that's set aside for non-US citizens buying property. Is that correct?
No, non-Hawaii people,
Yeah.
non-Hawaii.
Non-Hawaii residents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So mainland residents who own Hawaii real estate, selling real estate. And where is a withholding taxes from the HARPTA reflected? If it's, if it's part of the estimated taxes that's showing there, then the exposure is that part of that money might disappear when people file the returns next year.
Maryland, on the flip side too, I think we have a lot of local sales, which will be declared next year when they pay in April
Yeah.
versus paying now because they're paying under safe harbor.
Yeah, you don't know the mix of the sellers. You only
Yeah.
know the mix of the buyers.
Mm.
At least we don't know I don't know the mix of the sellers. Maybe Maryland does.
Maryland,
Yeah, I see a
Actually,
lot
when-
of non-residents selling Hawaii real estate. So
What
but
does that mean? We see a lot of non-residents selling Hawaii real estate. Where are we seeing that?
I see it.
Okay.
But Wendell, you also see a lot of local selling in your practice.
Yeah, I got quite a few because they're just taking advantage of this artificial valuation and they're saying, I can't get people to rent my place. I got to deal with that moratorium. So they're just selling. So I got quite a few clients locally that said they just had it with rentals. And a lot of them are low basis, and they're going to have a big gain. And then the ones that I have on the States, obviously, that's we won't see the gain. But then again, I've had some people in the estate side passing away early this year. I'm selling them now under the estate side, and boy, there's a big gain even with step up. So it's been nuts. For example, I just talked to somebody today. We're selling a 6-bedroom estate sale. Last year we had it valued at 7. They're selling. They have an escrow buyer at 1.4 million right now. It's.
I'm having a hard time hearing Wendell.
Yeah,
Oh,
Wendell, I'm
sorry.
having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, let me get the mic closer. So what I'm seeing in my practice is, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing in my practice is a lot of locals, because I have a lot of trust. And I'm responsible for the sale, is that there's so many rentals out there, old rentals, that they're tired of, one, they got to fix it up, but two, they can't get the rents because people are not paying them. So they're just selling and they're making huge profits on it. And I was mentioning on one, somebody passed away last year. We had an appraisal done at 700,000. I just got a call today that we got somebody buying it for 1.4 million. It's nuts. And this is all local sales. So, you know, if everybody's on the safe harbor, we should see a nice hit from real estate gains next year, you know. I don't know, but that's what I'm seeing. I don't
You know,
have
the other-
foreigners.
The other thing, so, I mean, all these things are important. They're all contributing, but the bottom line is that the excise tax collections and income tax collections are up extremely strong because of tourism being wide open and the comparison to a period when we were essentially still mostly shut down.
Yep.
And so, you know, I don't think we have to look for the explanations for why tax revenue growth has come in so strong, particularly in the first few months of this fiscal year. I think the question is, what's it going to do for the rest of the fiscal year? And
yeah,
I don't know, Seth, you have some more to cover?
Yep, I have like 3 more slides. Would you like me to proceed?
Sure.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So this is just the GET, right? And I'm sorry, Carl, I will change
Year over year.
this. Yeah, this is year over year. Well, at least I have this disclaimer, a month compared to the same month the previous year, right?
you're
Yep.
thinking about your mom.
And so as you'll remember, like we were doing pretty good, sank down in the depths of the this is the major shutdown in April, right? And so now I think it's helpful to remember what we're comparing ourselves against,
Yeah.
right? So at least over the next couple months until mid-November, we had our second shutdown in September, right? So over the next couple months, we do expect our GET to be up here, like pretty high up, because we're just comparing it to really low levels. And then we expect it to go down starting November, December as things happen. So that's just another remember. These are all, so this is the beginning of the year. So these 2 months are the first 2 months of the fiscal year.
May is just when all the tourists flooded in.
Yep. And, you know, May is when we compared it to this month, right? So
Yep.
you're just seeing math and arithmetic a lot here as well. So what the 48% is really, you know, since it wasn't as badly down, it does reflect that we were kind of peak tourism. I know this has come down in the last 2 weeks of August, but in July, we were really cooking. And then again, this is the current forecast, right? So you have at 3%, 4% all the way out. So that's your GE forecast. And I did make, if you guys want me to put it up, I can. I'm not in any rush to it, but I did create that model and I updated up with all the general fund numbers, the most up to date, if you want me to pull that up as well.
And I
That's
think
that's the sorry.
I'm sorry,
my bad.
I will just say, as you say, a lot of it is math. If you're down 50%, 1 year, you have to be up 100% to get back to where you started. So part of it is just the math involved. Yeah.
Agreed.
Any questions are set on the tax legislation or recent legislation?
That was interesting. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on the legislative side set that might impact the general fund? Okay, okay, I want to open it up to the next item, the discussion of the current year forecast for fiscal 2022. Carl, you usually lead us off.
I usually talk too much.
No, you usually get us started.
So, as a place to start, maybe we could, Seth, can you put up table 3?
Yeah, we
Or-
can.
Because I think, there's a lot going on. There's obviously concern about the Delta variant and the current state and the governor's announcement, and there's a lot of news reporting of the slowdown in tourism, which a piece of that is normal, and a piece of it is new cancellations and new bookings. But to put some perspective on this, the council's mean forecast for visitor arrivals for fiscal 2022 is 6.4 million visitors. That would be roughly what would happen if the number of visitors that came in January, February, and March of 2021 came for a whole year. That's how low that number is. So the growth rate of the visitor arrivals forecast that the council has submitted and plugged into the tax model is 95%. And the growth rate that I have that we're getting in the UHERO forecast is 150%. So we're starting off with the numbers that we're plugging in, I would argue, way too low. And that just reflects how strong the tourism recovery was through August. Interestingly, the September numbers, the first week of September was actually pretty strong. We had over 19,000 visitors a day through this first 6 weeks of six days of September. Now that number will go down pretty sharply as we go further into the month. If you look at the bookings numbers, and unfortunately we don't actually have real numbers, all we get is charts that show us this year versus last year, and you have to squint really hard. But when I squint really hard, I see a drop in booking statewide of something on the order of 5,000 room nights per 5,000 room nights per day during the month of September. But if you look out at October, November, there really hasn't been much change at all. So in other words, so the issue for and this is an issue that we've had to deal with for the last year and a half, is the issue is the pandemic, right? And are we going to have a kind of a lousy September, maybe a pretty lousy October, and then we bounce right back in November, just like we did last year? We had a really strong Thanksgiving and then a strong December. And that's essentially what we're assuming in our baseline forecast right now, is that the Delta variant, it's not going to go on for the next year. That particular variant, this surge, isn't going to keep going on and on and on and on. They don't work that way, right? It's going to peter out. Travel will pick back up again, probably in November, December, and we'll end up with a number much, much higher than 6.4 million visitors. So that's just some quick conversation to start us off. I'm happy to stop talking and let someone else say something.
Hey,
Carl?
Carl, what does that 6.4 2022, what does that compare with what the actual is for 2021?
For fiscal 2021,
Yes.
actuals were, let's see,
I have it up here actually.
3.3 million.
You can see it right here, Christy.
Yeah, so it's a 95% growth to get to 6.4. Seth said we can see it, but the screen didn't change, I don't think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't see it, huh?
That's the beauty of Zoom. So it was 3.3 million.
Okay.
And I mean, the bottom line is that the visitor numbers in really going all the way back to May, June, July, August, all of those came in way higher than what we were talking about at our last meeting. And in our last meeting, our visitor forecast was entirely too low. We talked about it at some length, and the actual visitor numbers and visitor spending all came in above our most optimistic forecast, right? We're doing a baseline, a high, and a low scenario, and the visitor numbers surpassed our high scenario for all of those months. Now our new forecast for the fall brings it down below that, right? So we are anticipating. So what we're doing right now is, so we had the visitor arrivals for August were 77% of where they were in 2019. In September, we're assuming they're going to come in at 60% of that level, and October at 60%, and then rebound and go right back up to high 90s for December, for similar kinds of reasons. The one caveat to how much strength we'll have going forward is that presumably Americans will be able to travel to Canada. On the other hand, Canadians will be able to travel to Hawaii in the fall. Once things open back up again, and they're able to travel right now. And once the Delta variant starts to slow down, we expect that the winter season, the Christmas season, will actually be pretty good.
Carl, you mentioned that 6.4 is way low. So
Yeah.
what kind of number are you anticipating for the fiscal year as a whole?
Well, our forecast is
7.5,
8.5,
8.3. 8.3.
Yep. So 150% growth rate for visitor arrivals and 145% growth for spending.
And Carl, what was fiscal 19? Was it like 10 or calendar 19? Was it 10.5 mil almost, or 10.4 mil?
I can't
Like
tell
what?
you fiscal
Or
19
calendar
off the top of my
19.
head.
Was it something like about 10.4 mil?
Yeah, pretty close to that. It sounds right. Let's see, visitor
10 plus mil.
arrivals. Yeah, 10.385 million.
Thanks.
Can I talk to one of the assumptions regarding the pandemic and the Delta virus variant? I've been reading a lot about the viruses, and there's a study on McKinsey and Company about when will the COVID-19 pandemic end. And basically they said, and all the other literature I've read says that because of the infectiousness of this Delta variant, in order to achieve herd immunity, you'd need a lot higher vaccination rate, and well, it could either be vaccination or people could get the disease. And the conclusion was that more realistically is we're going to end up not achieving herd immunity, and that the biggest, so basically the end point might be when we can manage COVID-19 as an endemic disease. And the biggest overall risk then is the emergence of another variant, which may not respond to the vaccination. So the thing about this particular variant, and I think, if I'm looking at things, I believe that we can, go over and do a surge and lessen the pandemic with more vaccinations or more people getting infected, and to get to a point where it would be more normal. Now, last year, when we were looking at all of this, Hawaii was known to have a very low infection rate. So people, when we opened up, they weren't afraid of coming to Hawaii to vacation because we were known to have a low infection rate. Now it's all over the US that we're in a high infection rate scenario, and this this disease is spreading quite rapidly through our community because it's much more infectious than the original COVID that came out. This Delta variant is quite a bit different. And the other thing is, I know some of the scientists are afraid that we're going to end up with a variant that cannot be stopped by the vaccines. And so that's real risk and real fear. And the other point I wanted to make is that more and more I've been seeing evidence, or I've been hearing from multiple sources, that there's a supply chain disruption that is affecting our economy here. The supplies coming into Hawaii, and also shipping is really backlogged. You know, there's a lot of shipping that is affected. And so products that are made, for example, cars, you know, cars that we used to be able to buy before easily. Now there's a shortage of cars. And so things that we normally took for granted for retail might not be as available. And people who are facing 30% increases in building supplies, for example, they might decide, hey, let's wait until the costs for all of these things might slow down. So I think that this pandemic is going to affect us a lot more than you think, just because it is affecting not only people in Hawaii with a visitor count, but also people in the US and worldwide. So the effect of it, you know, I guess we have to take in consideration how that will affect. I mean, I don't think that people from Asia, I don't think Japan, for example, is going to really open up very easily. I mean, I've been watching for that, but they aren't going to be allowing people to go back and forth and travel. So for Oahu, which was very, I guess, it relied a lot upon the Japanese tourists for the Honolulu visitor market. And I don't see that coming to fruition anytime soon, maybe next year, but there's a lot of commentators who have been saying that this pandemic, you know, we won't get control of it until 2023 is what I'm looking at. But, you know, the McKinsey article is pretty, I guess they've been following the pandemic, and I thought it was pretty relevant to what our discussion is here when we're projecting out in the future, and we have to make assumptions as far as where the pandemic is, where the variant is, and how we're going to respond to it. Because if our policymakers decide to respond to the point where shut down access to restaurants or different things, then you'll end up a situation where we end up I guess, negatively affecting businesses. And this time there's no federal, we don't have any federal stimulus money coming in like last year. And that's my fear, that we don't have the stimulus money coming in like we did last year that would boost up our economy here.
Carl?
So a couple of quick questions. One, these concerns that, you know, I think are very valid concerns. That's why at UHERO we're doing scenarios, because obviously there's a risk that I mean, in our low scenario, we're really thinking about the next wave with a new variant, and you know, and that sort of prolonging high costs on business and reducing visitor travel for some time. So what I'm wondering, Marilyn, is did you put all of those concerns into your forecast that you submitted to the council, or are we supposed to do some adjustment because of those concerns?
I was hoping that we would do some adjustments, because I've been following this. You know, the surge for Hawaii is coming on from August, and I've been reading more and more about the Delta variant and how it's so much worse than the original COVID variant, and how we are unlikely to get to the herd immunity until we're like 85% vaccinated. And
so can I jump in there for a second?
Policymakers here are going to be dealing with a surge of this variant? Will they be taking more and more aggressive action, which although it's not a definite shutdown, it ends up being that way because tourists coming here will say, okay, we can't go to the beach, we can't go to the restaurants, we can't do whatever. And so that was my concern, that we will restrict businesses again, but we have no fallback this year. We
So-
have no fallback that I see coming out from the federal government that would help small businesses or help businesses.
So far, the people in charge, the mayors, certainly Blangiardi and the governor, have expressed very clearly that the last thing they want to do is to have a shutdown. And we have to keep in mind that the real issue isn't the case counts, it's hospitalizations.
That's
Right?
correct.
What matters is the functioning of the hospitals. In terms of reaching some herd immunity, yeah, we all know that that old 70% target for vaccination really isn't adequate, and who knows, we don't know what level of immunity you need to really slow things down. But to put some perspective on this, if you look at the vaccinations that we have so far, so as of today, 72% of the population in the state has initiated a vaccine, and almost 63% are completely vaccinated. Now, there's another form of immunity. It comes from catching the disease. And if you only look at the Delta surge, which really started in mid-July, the exponential growth in cases started in mid-July. And if you only count the people who were confirmed as having been positive for COVID since mid-July, okay, and then you allow for the fact that there's lots of asymptomatic people walking around who never got tested, and you use a number typical number from national studies is 3 to 4 times as many people have been infected as are confirmed cases. You put all that together, you take the infection rates, you take the vaccination rates. By the end of this month, 80+% of Hawaii's population will have some form of immunity, either from being infected or from having a vaccine. And so the Delta variant is going to slow down, and it's going to slow down a lot. And the hospitalizations are going to slow down. Hospitalizations have been flat for a week. Now, maybe we're going to get a bump after Labor Day. Wouldn't surprise me. And that's the number one concern. And yes, if the hospitalization jump up enough, we might see a lockdown. But right now, government policy is not for a lockdown. And I agree with you, it's something to worry about, but it's not in the cards right now. And in the context of people being afraid to travel during Delta, but we had 19,000 people a day come to Hawaii over the last week, and Delta's been on the radar for a month and a half. Obviously people are still willing to travel, and probably many of these people are vaccinated. And as we've also seen the cases and hospitalizations start to fall off in many states. And so, lots of concerns. I would have hoped you would have built those into your forecast, just like we're building these into our forecast, and then we come up with a consensus.
Okay, I'd like to mention about the Delta variant is affecting more of the younger people, and there are breakthrough infections for people who are fully vaccinated. And I know because my niece came to visit us in Maui, and they left with COVID back to California. They tested in California.
They got on a plane with COVID.
They didn't know they had COVID because
Okay.
if you try to test here, it takes 10 days to try to get a test scheduled. So 10 days of waiting for a test, and they didn't have any COVID, the home testing available in the stores here. So the problem is that we're going to have continuous infection if they have if we don't have rapid testing for COVID, because the people who might suspect that they are sick won't be able to test until they go back to the mainland.
So remember, what matters is, I mean, obviously the cases matter, but what matters is the hospitalizations. And
Yes.
that's the point of, so roughly 13% of the people in the hospital right now were vaccinated. The vaccines work, right? And
Yes.
so we've already initiated 72% of the population. By the end of this month, 72% of Hawaii's population will have been vaccinated. And so the hospitalization numbers are going to go down.
I think
So
that-
that's my assumption, is that we may very well have already peaked on Delta, and by November and December, tourism will be back again. We may very well see another wave late in the winter with a new variant, and yeah, it'll matter a lot if it's a bad variant or it's just another slightly different one. But my view is that by Christmas, the tourism industry will have recovered. We're going to have a pause with very little job growth, but we're still going to be comparing, for tax purposes, we're going to be comparing, this winter to last winter, and the numbers are going to continue to go up, as Seth showed.
Yeah, I think that what we should be looking at actually is how many people are hospitalized, how many people are passing away. Looking at the actual infection rate is one thing, and it kind of indicates where we are going to be with respect to the hospitalization rate and our how many people are going to show up in the hospital. And so to me, the limiting factor is having enough hospital beds. And, with the policymakers, maybe, setting up tents, maybe to handle all these COVID patients may be a good thing. If there are people who are refused to get vaccinated versus the people who are vaccinated. And I think from talking to a lot of these people who are unvaccinated, I don't think they'll change their mind about becoming vaccinated. And that's my concern. If that's the case, then we have to just deal with the fact that we're going to have a disease that's going to be running through our community. And I guess adjust our forecast according to, this disease and also future variants that might come into play.
Well, in order for us to adjust, and by the way, I don't disagree with what you said, but in order for us to adjust our forecast, we have to have something to adjust. And at this point, we have nothing to adjust yet. And so, my recommendation is that we focus on the forecasters. We can talk endlessly about COVID policies and Delta variants and Lambda variants and whatever else is out there. But we need to focus on the forecasts here. And when I got the forecast spreadsheet, the input spreadsheet from the Department of Taxation, I saw the line there about what your general fund forecast would be. I left it blank because, that's the purpose of our meeting, is to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to rely on the discussion and the inputs of the models. And when I got the models yesterday or whenever they were emailed to us, I was really surprised by the extent of variation among the models in terms of the forecast, as well as the variation within the models.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, Seth, if you have any insights as to these numbers, because they're surprisingly, the variation between the models is surprisingly high.
Yeah. I haven't seen that before either.
There's a few models that should be thrown out.
Yeah,
I mean, come
so
on,
we were really struggled with that. One of the things so let me just say what's happening. We're getting 150% changes in models, and our models are never meant to see this size of variation. So one of the things we did was the table 8, which we sent you this morning, shows you the sensitivity of the models to the different incomes. And so what's really driving this is the increase in visitor arrivals A 10% increase in visitor arrivals results, and this is for our input mean forecast, which is model number 1, translates to 2.1% of general fund growth, right? So that's what's going on with the UCLA models. They're even more dependent on
Visitors.
the visitors, and they're all logged. So if you, there's some like, there's in normal years, there's no worry of exponential divergence, but since we're doing that, that's what we're seeing. And we could save this for afterwards, but we didn't want to change any of the models because you do not change models without asking permission of you guys. But we would like the permission to go in and relook at the models and re-standardize the models because they do not seem to be up to the task of our current environment.
There are no models that I mean, we had to rebuild our models all the way back in March. When you have discontinuities, right? These models aren't designed for that. They can't handle it. And so you literally have to design out the discontinuities, and it's a pain in the neck, but yeah, it has to be done.
Okay.
I would throw out model 2.
So if,
I agree.
So
Any
I went
UCLA
through
model can't do
Seth's-
anything.
go ahead.
Yeah, model 2, we don't, especially because we were looking at it. I mean, one of the problems is we get all your forecasts like a week before, and then we're trying to do this and we're trying to get everything out. So we really do not, I don't have a good answer for you for the UCLA model, to be perfectly honest with you. But we want to look at that. But the UCLA model went crazy.
Yep,
I see that.
very nuts.
I mean, for sure.
All right, so do you want to hear my thoughts on the forecast for 2022? I
Go ahead.
don't know, it
Go ahead.
depends on the chairman, how you want this discussion.
Yes, please please proceed.
Well, I basically, what I did is I was looking at that spreadsheet that the model, the general fund revenue calculator model that Seth had sent us.
Would you like me to bring it up, or would you not?
I don't think at this point, there's not quite a reason to do that, but it's maybe in a moment. But anyway, I was, we have 2 months, and for the other 10 months, I thought I would try to do it as, let's take 2019 and take 85% of 2019, just for example. Okay. And when I did that for for the 10 months, and I add in 180 million for the the county share of the TAT, add it back in, or whatever all that stuff is for the TAT, I come up with negative 5.3 for fiscal 2022 compared to fiscal 2021. And and I'm not comfortable with that number because if 22 is going to be a better year than 21, I mean, that seems logical that it should be, unless we have another lockdown sort of arrangement. So, I'm just throwing those numbers out there so we can have something to talk about.
So I took the calculator and then I used so we do a general fund forecast as part of our quarterly models. So I have a forecasted quarterly growth rate for general funds for each quarter of the fiscal year, and I just I figured out what the September number would be based on my first quarter fiscal year forecast, and then assumed the quarterly growth rates would be this constant for each month, which is not a great solution, but plugged in all the numbers. And so for September, I had 15%, which just happened to be what Seth had. I don't think that means anything. And then for the second fiscal quarter, 31%, the third fiscal quarter, 23%, And then the fourth fiscal quarter minus 18%. And I got 7.7% for the fiscal year. And I can't remember what the flat 15% had. That's a little higher than what actually comes out of my
The
model.
flat 15 had 8.2%,
Oh, okay.
but it's not flat 15. The last quarter is negative 10, 4, and 4.
So the forecast that comes out of our model, I think, was 6.25% for the fiscal year. And I mean, I'm certainly not comfortable with a negative number. It doesn't make it, you know, we're comparing 3 quarters against a miserable 3 quarters. And the final fourth quarter will, in other words, year over year, the comparison is, it doesn't even begin to get, you know, much competition until the third fiscal quarter. And then the fourth fiscal quarter will almost certainly be negative. And, you know, and so what is, these are just forecasts, but they're, I mean, we've tried to build in everything plus the kitchen sink. You know, we have estimates of the lost unemployment benefits. We have all the estimates of the federal stimulus and it going away. We have, you know, the basically August jobs being about the same as July, and then being down in September and October and November. Actually have the unemployment rate going up in the fourth quarter. I mean, there's a lot going on in there, and surely, you know, obviously it could be worse, but I think a number like 6%, which is a little bit above what we had in our last forecast. And you know, you kind of keep in mind that even with the Delta variant, we just had a gangbusters summer, the big in terms of tax revenue and in terms of visitors spending money in the state. The one thing that's, I think, is the biggest concern is really whether enough people are going to go back to work. And even with the slowdown associated with the Delta variant, there's more jobs available than there have been people willing to work. And so I'm not quite as concerned about the unemployment, the loss of the unemployment benefits, as I would be otherwise.
Fiscal 21 was also inflated, right, by over 4 points by the 300 million in July of 2020. Because that was accounted for in fiscal 21 general fund growth rate.
Oh, so what you're saying is that one of the reasons why the number is so large is because of a year-over-year effect?
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what you're saying, Carl. What I'm saying is we have a very high base period. Fiscal 21 is artificially high because in July of 2020, we had over 4 points that were pushed into that fiscal year because it was 300 million, which is over 4 points of the general fund.
But that's already been accounted for in the history of the July 2021 collections compared to July of 2020. Right, they're down 14% because of that.
Well, it should be, yeah. It should be in the fiscal year, fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Seth's calculator, it's, you know, the first 2 months of the fiscal year are hard data. And
I don't think we were looking month to month. I don't think we were looking the first 2 months.
Would you guys like me to show you the calculator so we're all on the same page?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or actually the draft of the month to month, because that will.
I'm just talking about the calculator, which has the.
So, do you guys see my screen all right?
We didn't look at this yet, right?
No.
Why are your numbers different than mine?
Because I updated them today.
Okay.
Right, like, but they're different by a couple
Small
$1 million.
amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't, so
Okay.
this is the month of July, right? So we were down negative 14.4%. And then we had this is the general fund number that I showed you today, right? For total, this is, as I pointed out, we're up 49.9 month over month, or August 2022 compared to August 2021 is up by nearly 50%. And year to date, we are up 7.3%. So 7.3%, including the elevated base, is already in that number.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
I moved 7.3%. No, never mind.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too flippant.
We wouldn't want that, Carl.
But I will move 6.2.
I don't know if this guy's helps or informs any of your analyses or your opinions, but if you just looked at if you just look at this, right? So this would be the trajectory of fiscal year 22, right? So these are the first 2 months. This is hard data. And then under the current scenario, we're below, we're below fiscal year 20 at the beginning months, and then we're slightly above it, right? And then we diverge from it radically as the pandemic set in. But you can, if you wanted to like compare yourself against to a certain year, you think one scenario from a previous year is more probable, you can also play with your models that way.
Currently,
So-
we're at 5, right? 5%. So you're proposing 6.2, Carl?
I think we're 3.
You're at 3.
We're at 3.
Yes.
No, 6.3.
You know, last year we had all that money coming in from the federal government. And that's kind of a worrisome item for me, that we're not going to get that money coming through. I think maybe the government is thinking that this pandemic was going to be one surge and that would be it. So they gave out so much money, but I'm not sure people have the stomach to do another big surge. And I mean, to do another big federal stimulus.
So one of the things you got to keep in mind is that, so yes, the unemployment benefits and the payments to households, that's not going to repeat itself, but a bunch of the federal money hasn't been spent. And the state, the money that the state got, it's going to take them, actually, the ARPA funds have, I think, until late calendar year 2023 to spend the money. And so, I mean, it's not all gone. I take your point, and it's a valid point. And like I said, we've built. So if you look at you look at transfer payments, I mean, our estimates are that total transfer payments in the state, so that includes all those direct payments to households, all of the unemployment benefits, have gone from, or will have gone from, 7 billion to 4 billion over from first quarter of 2020 2021 to first quarter of 2022, they will fall in about 50%, not quite 50%. And actually yeah, they will have fallen 50% because the assuming that the child tax credit and earned income tax credit all expire. So that, yeah, those are valid concerns. And like I said, we tried to build those into our model as best we could. So our income, so if you look at real income in our forecast in calendar year fiscal 2022, it falls versus calendar year fiscal 2021. But one other way of looking at that is the federal dollars basically replaced all the visitor spending we lost. And now we're getting the visitor spending back and we're losing the federal dollars. It's not, it's obviously it's not exactly 1-for-1, but if you put people back to work and you bring the visitor spending back, it helps to replace a lot of that lost federal money.
What about the infrastructure bill that's going to put a bunch?
Well, so we tried to build in the infrastructure spending. I think we probably have it in the model too early because there's no such thing as a shovel-ready project.
Yeah.
But we have it in the second half of 2022 and into 2023. So that like I said, that might be too soon. And the real wild card is the rest of the budget, which is who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I guess a little bit has been coming to light today that there's quite a bit of potential tax increases on the second part of the infrastructure, the human infrastructure.
On the budget bill, yeah.
Yeah.
If it passes.
Yeah.
Can I ask Seth a question about a spreadsheet?
Jack, you can always ask me a question about my spreadsheet.
Mysteries. Why 15% and then why the -10 for April?
Well, this was just a really conservative effort, right? Estimate, because personally, I expect at least 30% growth for when you compare a good year compared to a year that was in total shutdown. So I just put in 15%, and then we'll never have, like, this year was, I had just put in -10% because April of 2021 was like going to be too good of a year to compare to, and then this was just a return to normal growth.
Okay. I noticed that for April that the April 2021 was 992 million, right?
Yes.
And 100 million less for April 2022. Is that in part driven by the withdrawal of federal support, federal income support, or not?
That,
say yes.
yeah. I mean, I just kind of plugged in numbers. I didn't. I don't want to.
It's
I
a
don't want to
subjective forecast, Jack.
say that like I know exactly what's going on.
No, I know we all play these games, but I mean, something is pushing it down. And
But we had the American Rescue Act, right, in early March of 2021.
So
put on a lot of money.
So it is. I mean, it does make sense that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you're comparing April, May, June to a stronger period when tourism was starting to rebound. We had big payments to households in 2020 that you're not going to get. I'm sorry, in 2021, you're not going to get in 2022. They happened before April. They happened in March mostly. The BEA reported almost all of those transfer payments happened in March, and the numbers that I plugged into my spreadsheet were, I think, 15% for the first month, and 15% for September, 31% for October, November, December, because that's our fourth quarter forecast, 23% for January, February, March, and then minus 18% for April, May, June. And that gives me 7.7. And I mean, I moved a number of 6.25 because I know there's a number of people who are quite worried about a number as high as 7.7.
What was the last quarter you said, Carl?
Minus 18.
Minus 18. The other thing I wanted to just remind you guys is the one of the people's payments were very high last year because of the fiscal transfers, but so their savings went up too, right? So one of the big questions is, I mean, people are, the household balance sheet is the largest and most positive cash flow, or has the most amount of assets ever, right? And so the question is, are you going to spend it? And the initial response, at least over the summer before the Delta variant, was yes, people will spend it. And so you do get a delay in between the fiscal stimulus and the economic benefits, because people were not allowed to spend it when they were under shutdown. And now they have more economic freedom and they are spending it.
Christy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was actually searching for what our last estimate was, because I've seen numbers all over the place.
It's
Was it
3% for the current fiscal year.
my numbers were a little bit more optimistic than that. I am concerned about the recent slowdown. When I have done a little bit of traveling lately, and the planes were packed. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think things are slowing down.
Yeah, they're starting to really not be as packed. A lot more
And
seats this week.
So this is anecdotal. My kids are able to get cheap fares on airlines. So if they need to come home, they can do that. So yeah, it's a good thing. But it's not as it was in July, June, July, August. Certainly we're seeing a slowdown. My numbers, so I did reflect, I think a bit slower increase in visitor arrivals. Instead of 120%, I said 110. So I did slow that down a little bit, but my numbers are still a little bit optimistic. I am concerned though, that we will not see this sustained trend that we did. I think there may have been a certain amount of people locked up so long, finally they got out and traveled, and maybe they got some of that out of their system. I don't know. So I'm a little bit skeptical that we will be able to see really strong numbers through the rest of the fiscal year. And of course, yeah, it's going to be hard to see for fourth quarter year-over-year growth, because that was such a strong quarter. So I would be one of those people that Carl is talking about. I would feel a little uncomfortable being overly optimistic about this year, just because I see that slowdown happening in the tourism for whatever reason, whether it's because of the Delta variant or because, people got the travel bug out of their system or whatever. I think we're starting to see some slowdown. Certainly, I was seeing lower prices for airlines. People are scrambling more to try to fill up their planes. And I think you'll see that in other sectors in the tourism industry, where people are just going to, as Marilyn was alluding to, with the Delta variant being so contagious, even if you're vaccinated and even if you're wearing masks, you can still get this. I think people are going to be a little bit leery about going into restaurants and really going down into crowded venues as they were before. So I'm a little bit worried. I'm always a little bit worried, but I'm a little bit more worried than I was a few months ago.
Well, thank you, Christy. Scott, what's your thoughts and views?
So sorry, I'm actually kind of the other way from Christy. In the sense of, I agree with Carl. I'm somewhat optimistic. I think, I'm looking closer to 7. The only reason being is that I think the visitor arrivals are showing that, they're still coming. Some of the numbers are slowing down a little bit. Once again, I think that's partially due to the season, but I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal that basically stated that people that have their tickets are saying they can't cancel, because if they cancel, they're out $3,000 to $5,000, and they're saying, yeah, we recognize that there's a health risk, but people are saying I'm vaccinated. It's worth it for me. I'm still going. I can't lose that deposit. It's still a big vacation for me, and I'm taking it. So I think people are still going to be coming. And I think furthermore, with Europe potentially shutting down to the US travelers, Hawaii looks like a great destination once again. They can't get to Europe. They can't get to Asia. If they want to get away, the thought might be, they're going to come to Hawaii. So I once again, and also what Christy stated too, is that, I've been seeing a lot more advertisements and marketing of lower airfares. I think what we're going to see is probably the visitor count will be up, but the spending may be down. So, we may be attracting more discount travelers in the future down the road. Now, how much of an impact that's going to be, I think they're still going to be paying, a certain amount in TAT and other GET costs. So I think, it's not going to drop off a cliff because they're budget travelers, but I still think there's significant upside to what's going to happen with the economy, barring a shutdown, as Marilyn alluded to. That it comes down to policy, but the governor and Mayor Blangiardi's already stated that they're against it. Now it all comes down to whether or not it's an absolute need. But Carl makes a good point. I think if there may be a spike, but it's the hospitalizations, and if it's true there is some level of immunity that's going around, I think there's going to be less hospitalizations. So I think the number, I think a 7% number is defendable, and I think that's realistic.
Well, thanks, Scott. Wendell?
I've just come to the conclusion, maybe I was thinking about talking with all my friends on the mainland and people I know on the mainland. They're operating as if the pandemic is done, that they're just going to live life. They're moving on. The fact that you have a really small percentage of people that end up in the hospital and dying, I think people have just gotten to that point. That's what we got to live with, and they're moving on with life. And so Hawaii's been the anomaly in all of this, being way more conservative because of our restrictions and remoteness. I just think that we're going to continue to be busy. I mean, you talk to almost everybody I know in business, they're busy. I talk to folks on the mainland, they're busy. You talk to the people on the mainland, they're not even wearing masks, regardless of where they're at. It's in their minds, it's something that's overblown by the media, a very small percentage. If you look at the percentage and numbers of people that, and I hate to say it this way, have passed away or are getting infected that need hospitalization, it's a small number. The rest of us are trying to move on from that. And I think what you're seeing is there's better techniques to deal with people who have COVID, that supply and demand, that they're ramping up in the other states to take care of these folks that get these unvaccinated individuals with 80% or more that are getting vaccinated, that are not getting vaccinated and ending up in the hospitals, is a small percentage of the whole. And the whole is just ready to move on from that. And I really think that we're going to see a continued pace of increases. And hopefully transitory inflation goes away as supply and demand evens out, being cars, being whatever product that is. I'm feeling optimistic.
Well, what number are you thinking of, Wendell?
I was at, and I'm still learning how to put all these numbers together, and I probably got to get a better lesson from Seth. But I feel like what Carl is proposing is 6 is conservative and probably the right 6.3, whatever the right place is, I kind of just really feel it's higher. It's in that 7 or 8% range.
Okay, we want to take a vote. Anyone want to?
Make
Hmm?
one,
Oh, go ahead,
I
Marilyn.
think that the problem,
Hey,
I
Jack
see-
needs to
I just
talk.
returned from the mainland, and so I've seen what people think, and people who know I'm from Hawaii was mentioning about the surge. The governor said, don't come, so they're postponing, the ones I see, the ones I deal with, speakers who come for conferences, don't want to come. If they come, they said they'll postpone it to maybe January. So it has some effect as far as, I think, lowering the demand for tourism in the next, I guess, for the rest of the year. And people are just waiting to see how the surge is going to end up in Hawaii, especially since we have a concern with lack of ICU, lack of hospital beds. And for the local people who are here and think, okay, if I have a heart attack or I have some kind of major disease that I will need the hospital or have an accident, then the hospital situation is limited. And so you have some fear there from people who might not want to go out, even if they're not tourists, they're local people who just won't go out. And so I think there's going to be a dampening of some of the effects that we had before. I think there was more freedom, but now that hospitals are full, and so people are thinking, okay, I don't want to end up going to the hospital. I'll be very conservative in what I do going out. So that's the other consideration. I understand there was a surge in tourism. And I think that if we didn't have this Delta variant and we didn't have this limitation in hospitals, we would have a really great economy, this really great forecast this upcoming fiscal year. I just kind of wonder whether that and the supply chain disruptions from what's happening on the mainland for people who are not able to produce products that normally would come, those things I think would affect how much people spend, because for construction or fixing up homes or doing the regular activities that they normally would have done. Buy a new car, sorry. Yep. Jack,
So
Jack
Sid,
has his hand up.
okay, Seth, last year, we had projected 5% at the May meeting, but we ended up at what, 8.3, was it?
We ended up at 8.3, yes,
8.3. And our current forecast for the current fiscal year is 3%.
correct.
So, Carl, you proposed 6.3?
I think Jack wanted to talk.
No, the only observation I wanted to make was
Yeah.
that if we do adopt 6 or even 7%, we're talking about $500 million more in revenues than we had in fiscal 2021, and 400 million more than we had or actually 500 million more than we had in fiscal 2019. So, I mean, we're talking about, very robust revenue collections.
Yeah, that's a very, $500 million, over 7 billion. So that's a pretty big.
So I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable with that. Well, maybe not all of us,
So,
at least the majority of us.
And that's over 2019, which was a very strong year.
Yeah, it was roughly, if I remember correctly, 7.1 billion.
Mhm.
So this would be about a $500 million increase for the current, over the last fiscal year.
That's correct.
In the last fiscal year, we had some shutdown in that period, but we also had the federal stimulus. We had that 300 million in July of 2020.
Well, it's even a bigger increase if you put the 300 million from the
Yeah,
revenue shift back into 2020.
Yeah.
Right.
and then we also had the TAT, right? The TAT that's going into the general fund.
Yeah.
That's about 2
So
points.
anyway, I'm not speaking against, I think it's stretch the imagination against Carl's number. And I'd like to move a vote on that.
So if you just take into account inflation, just say 3% inflation for 2 years, that takes you from 7.1 to 7.5 billion. So no real growth at all, and you'd be at 7.5 billion. And 6.25, which I think is what I proposed, takes you
6.3.
to 6.3, takes you to something. Seth's, let's see.
I can do it.
My numbers are slightly different than Seth's.
6.3 takes you to 7.7 million.
Yeah,
So anyway, but I don't know if your motion has ever been seconded.
I don't
And
think
if
so.
not,
Carl, what did you just do? You took into account inflation of 3% per year from fiscal 19 to fiscal 2022,
Yep.
so 9% inflation. And
No,
then what was
3% in 20, 3% in 2021. I didn't do a third year.
you
He
just did? You didn't do 2 years? You didn't do 2022?
Correct.
So
So
here are the exact numbers depending on what you want to put in.
And then what was the other factor you considered besides inflation, Carl?
I didn't consider anything. I was just telling you what 2 years of 3% inflation would get you. That would get you to 7.5 billion. So if you put in a third year, then that gets you to 7.7 billion. So what I'm getting at is that just price increases alone would get you to 7.7 billion.
I see what you're saying, yeah. 1.06 times 7.1 billion is 7.5 billion.
Well,
That's
yeah,
four-
I'm
That's
compounding.
400,000 of the 500,000. Oh, 500 million, 400 million over the 500 million.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
No, but it's an important fact. I mean, it would be
No,
a,
it is.
it would be a big jump in actual dollars.
Right, except you can get there with no growth. No real growth. Now, will the real economy be bigger in fiscal 2022 than it was in fiscal 2019? I think that's what our forecast is. I'd have to double check it.
Yeah.
Real,
Because what is our tourism number that you were using, Carl, for the 4 year 6.3? Was it 8 point something in?
was
tourism?
8.3 in fiscal 2022. It was 8.3 million tourists.
And in fiscal, back in 19, fiscal 9, well, calendar 19, we had about 10.4 million tourists, right?
And we had unemployment of 2 point something, right?
Yeah.
So it was a different world.
Fortunately, I don't have fiscal 2019 in my data tables, so I can't make the,
Can we move to a vote on this? We've spent an hour and a half on.
So we're waiting for a second.
Second, I'll second.
Okay, so the vote for fiscal 2022 is 6.3% growth. Okay, Vice Chair Niwao,
No,
Dr. Siderhouse,
Yes,
okay, Dr. Bonham,
yes.
okay, Councilmember Maynard,
Yes,
okay, Councilmember Hayashi,
Yes,
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Okay, so the vote carries 6-1 in favor of the 6.3% growth rate for fiscal 2022. Okay, next discussion on fiscal 2023. We broke it out because we thought fiscal 2022 would be more of a regular base period. We didn't have as much noise.
Kurt,
Yes,
did you vote?
yes. I voted
Okay.
for.
Okay, you said
voted for
6-1. Yeah.
Yeah, 6-1.
Okay.
Yeah. So next is fiscal 2023. Any thoughts?
what is our current estimate?
4%. So this is, just so you guys know, this is the last Council on Revenue's general fund forecast. And this is the current year.
So that was from the May meeting, right?
Correct.
I'm comfortable with the 4% forecast.
I am also.
Anyone want to discuss it further?
I think it's conservative for 23, but I'll take it.
Vice Chair Newell?
No comment. Everything is, to me, dependent upon what happens to the Delta virus and what happens if there's another variant that comes around.
And I think our letter to the governor usually provides for those kind of caveats.
Councilmember Hayashi? Any
Yeah,
comment?
nope. I think 4 is defendable.
Okay, Councilmember Lee?
Same, 4% is fine.
Okay. Who wants to make a motion and second? it?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Dr. Sidehouse makes the motion at
I'll
4%.
second.
Fiscal
second.
2023, and Councilmember Maynard will second the 4% growth rate for fiscal 2023. Okay, Vice Chair Wong?
I'll say yes, assuming there's nothing really major happens.
Dr. Siderhouse?
Same, yes.
Dr. Bonham?
Yes.
Councilmember Maynard?
Yes,
Councilmember Hayashi?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes,
Okay, so the vote is unanimous, 7-0, for a 4% growth rate for fiscal 2023. Okay, next we have the next 5 fiscal years, fiscal 24 to 28. And Dr. Kobe, could you refresh our memory, what was our forecast for those 5 years?
4%.
4%.
4%.
Actually, when I said 4% sounds good to me, I actually meant 4% sounds good to me from here to eternity.
For now.
I think that's up at Schofield.
So anyone want to discuss fiscal 24 to 28? Vice Chair, do you have any comments?
I guess the question I had for Carl was the inflation factor. How much are you forecasting for the inflation in the out years?
Our inflation rates are, let's see. So actually, I was really surprised at the parameters from the models that Seth sent over, that how high the parameters were on the GDP deflator. It just struck me as a little bit odd. Our forecast for the Honolulu Cpi, what do you mean by, okay, so we've already done 22 and 23. For 24, it's 2.7, and then it's basically 2.4 for the next 3 years. And that's a little bit high, right? That's about 0.4 of a percentage point above a target. It's, I mean, our inflation rates have been well below that over the last decade. And so, but I think it's probably still a pretty conservative estimate given the amount of monetary stimulus we've had.
So actually what you're saying is you don't think that the current inflationary trends that we've seen for various things like gasoline prices and groceries and everything and lumber is going to last? You're going to say that?
No, I mean, no, I don't think it will last. Our forecast for fiscal 2022 is 3.5, and then it goes down to 3, and then it goes down to 2.5, actually below that, 2.3, 2.4 in the out years. And I think those could actually be a little bit too high. I mean, the bottleneck issue, those are the kinds of things that economies deal with, right? I mean, they work their way out, right? You know, you take a look at what happened to lumber prices. You know, they've basically collapsed from their peaks. They're still up from year over year, but the supply bottlenecks will work their way out. We will work through those. The reason we have a little bit higher inflation is the persistent monetary stimulus. And you know, the asset price inflation and things like that we're seeing. So if we had higher inflation, then these numbers would be higher. The 4% would be
Yeah.
too low, right?
Yeah,
So
that's what I
at
was-
2.4%, we only have 1.6% real growth, which actually is probably about right.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking about the inflation factor.
Commodity prices have been up, right? Especially like oil.
What was the question?
Commodity prices have been up too.
Some, yeah. Computer chips.
Yeah, I mean, oil, food.
Yeah, I mean, you know, everything is being reflected against, you know, pandemic lows still. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, they're not going to collapse. They're not going to fall back and have deflation. But I don't think we're going to see, you know, 5, 6, 7% inflation for a foreseeable period of time.
Okay, any further discussion on the forecast for fiscal 24 to 28? Anyone want to make a motion?
I still move, Wendell,
Okay, and your motion is at what rate?
the 4.
Okay, any second?
Second,
Okay, second is Vice Chair Newell and also Councilmember Dr. Bonham. Okay, vote on the forecast, general fund forecast for fiscal 2024 to fiscal 2028, the 5 years. The motion on the table is at 4% for every year for each of those 5 years. Vice Chair Newell,
yes,
okay, Dr. Siderhouse,
Yes.
Dr. Bonham,
Yes.
Councilmember Maynard,
Yes,
Councilmember Hayashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Okay, and so the vote carries Dr. Kobe 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the report by Budget and Finance for non-general fund revenues, other revenues.
While we're waiting for Donovan to come on and make the presentation, would you guys like us to relook at the core models and play with them a little bit and try to get them more accurate in light of recent fiscal moves, or would you prefer that we just leave things as is?
You know, did anything ever come, Dr. Kobe, of like having maybe like a seminar or some kind of training for the members of the council?
I haven't done any. My recollection is I was going to speak with Jack about
Yeah.
the TPI forecast, but this is slightly different,
We
right?
were also going to look at the model. as
The
part of the
general
training.
fund models. Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the training, you know,
Mhm.
so that we would have input from the council.
Okay. We can. So are you requesting a session at another meeting, a general fund meeting? Are you requesting a different meeting, or
Yeah,
that
different
would
meeting.
be just training?
Yeah, it would be more for like Dr. Bonham and Dr. Siderhouse don't really need the training, but the other 5 people really, I think, I mean, I don't want to, the other 5 people are not economists, right? They don't have their PhD in economics. So I think,
I would love that.
yeah, it could be beneficial, especially the general fund, and also it would give all the entire core an opportunity to provide, you know, suggestions on tweaking the model.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
work on that then.
Okay,
Great.
but I need volunteers, you know, to help do the training. I know we had asked Dr. Bonham and Dr. Siderhouse, and I know Dr. Tian was willing to, you know, provide training for us too.
I seem to have some spare time.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Dr. Siderhouse.
Thank you.
but in answer to Seth's question, I think taking a look at the models and see why they went so crazy would be a good thing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we know we're starting to have a good idea we know why they went crazy, right? Because we're dealing with 100% changes in some of our
Right.
variables when you're really only supposed to deal with 5 or 6%.
Right.
The question is, do you want us to like take a shot at like coming up with better models? And we can do that if you'd like.
I think we should try that.
Okay.
Donovan coming on.
Here. Ready?
There he is. Yay.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council
Hi, Mr.
members.
Chan. Welcome.
My name is Donovan Chun, and I'm with the Department of Budget and Finance.
Okay.
We've provided you with our report
Do you
of
want to share this?
revenue projections.
Would you like to
uh,
share the screen?
I actually do not have it on.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's, have
You were
that?
sent. It was sent out to you in your
Okay.
packet.
Yeah,
We'll look at it.
we have it.
The revenue projections of general fund non-tax revenues, non-general fund tax and non-tax revenues since the May 25th meeting. Our report includes a summary of significant changes. There are a few significant ones that I'm going to highlight. The revenue estimates were prepared by departments in July and the beginning of August, and were based on point in time assumptions made by programs and department staff. So 3 significant ones. Under other than special fund non-tax revenues, which is on table 5A.
Mr. Chan, I can share my screen.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so we're on 5A, right?
This is where we see the federal spending that is still in
Yes.
the economy.
Yes.
Already.
So under federal COVID-19 funds, there's a net increase in fiscal years 21 and 22. That reflects the update of federal funds received to provide unemployment insurance benefits. That was 1.042 billion.
1.04 billion.
Oh,
A billion with a B?
This is,
With a B.
this is table 5A, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Federal COVID-19 funds. There is also the coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds. That is 1.641 billion. Those were the funds that were mentioned earlier. They have been given to the state and they have gone through the appropriation process, but I guess there's a timing issue as to when the appropriation was made and when the guidance came out. So those are being reviewed as the request for release come through. So those funds are still getting processed out into the departments.
and is that reflected on this table, Donovan?
Yes, that's part of that large increase under federal COVID-19 funds.
Okay, thank you.
And then the third item is under non-revenue receipts. There's a net increase in fiscal year 21 and a net decrease in fiscal year 22. And that primarily reflects the states and the counties they changed the schedule as far as the other post-employment benefit payments to the EUTF. So basically, under emergency proclamation, they were going to suspend those payments.
Mhm.
But after reassessing, they went ahead and made the payment in 21, and then they actually shifted the 22 payment forward into 21.
Oh, they
So
paid
there
early?
was a-
They
I beg
paid
your
early?
pardon?
They paid early in
Yeah.
20.
Yeah, so it was, they had reassessed as we got toward the end of the fiscal year. So in 21, they actually made a payment of 1.12 billion. And then they reduced the fiscal year 22 payment by 390 million. And that part of it was that shift forward, yeah.
Mhm. So that's the difference between the 1.7 billion versus the close to 2 billion.
Yeah, well, that's one of the items in that category,
Okay.
but those are the largest. And those are the big ones. I figured I better mention them since they have a B after them.
Mhm.
Any questions?
Any questions on Mr. Chun? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chun.
I move to accept the report.
Second? Any second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, second. Okay, vote to accept the report by BNF for non-general funds. Vice Chair Niwa,
Yes,
Dr. Siderhout,
Yes.
Dr. Bonham,
Yes,
Councilmember Maynard,
Yes,
Councilmember Hayashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Okay, so the vote to approve BNF's report is 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Chung. Okay, next item is the next meeting for non-general fund personal income. And Dr. Kobe, could you remind us when is the reporting deadline?
January 10th.
Oh, it's November, right?
Oh, I'm sorry for the, yeah, we're doing that one.
That TPI?
Yeah, the TPI, I apologize. It's November 5th.
November 5th. How is everyone's schedule?
The second is election day.
Okay, we don't want to have it that. Is it the
But,
election
but
this
then,
year?
yeah, but no, not here. Huh? I
Oh,
don't think
it's-
so.
Do we have
Not
election?
of- It's not an even number year.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's election somewhere, but not here.
Okay.
Can we, is the second too close?
so
Sometimes we have it at end of October because we're not waiting like for the monthly report, like for the
this is
general.
TPI though.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I'm off island from the 28th of October until the 1st.
Is everybody okay with the second?
I'm good.
I could do the second. I'm traveling, but I can do the second at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How's everyone else for November 2nd at 2 p.m.?
works for me.
I have
Me as well.
a conflict, but I can, that's Tuesday. Yeah, I can try to rearrange it.
Would you prefer, Carl, you return on the 2nd?
I will be in the office on the 2nd, but not on the 1st.
Marilyn, I mean, is it, how difficult is it for you to rearrange your other meeting?
I don't know. Or we could do it on a third.
Third's not good for me. I couldn't do the 3rd. But I mean, you could run the meeting on the 3rd.
No, we can try to the second. I'll try to rearrange my appointment.
Okay.
That's election day.
How about everyone else? Is 2 o'clock on November 2nd okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll schedule it for November 2nd at 2 o'clock. Okay, and I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. And then I think I'll talk offline with Dr. Siderhouse and Dr. Kobe. And then I will host the lunch that I'm proposing we have a lunch to discuss the training, and I'll pay for the lunch.
Oh.
But
Thank you.
I'm not saying we're going
Okay.
to, miss a reasonable, a nice place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Kurt, can you
When
give
is
me,
the reporting date? Oh, go
can you
ahead.
give me, can you
Yeah.
give me a second, please? Because I need
Sure,
to
sure.
make a bathroom stop.
Okay. Seth, when is the reporting date for this meeting?
The reporting date for this meeting is the 15th.
Okay, so we still have some time then.
Yeah, we have time today.
Okay.
Dude, what's your schedule like over the next? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's the 10th. I lied. Sorry. It's the 10th. So we are a little bit under the gun. If we get stuff to you tomorrow, would that work for you? Do you have time to look it over?
Yes, tomorrow's good. Tomorrow's good.
Okay. Yeah. So we just need to get in by Friday. So we should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, Thursday may not be as good, just to let you know.
Yeah, well, I'll get everything out to you tomorrow morning. And is there any main points that you want to highlight that are not in the normal COVID note?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of uncertainty, with the Delta variant,
Yeah.
but I
A
guess,
lot of us are, yeah, this is
Yeah.
Maryland. I think the variant is really the concern I have.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's already lots of language about uncertainty resolving the